What's going on, everybody? Spring is in the air. Yes, we have a bit of a break with the UFC fights, but you know what? 3 cards with absolutely stacked cards. I mean, I think this is a perfect situation of quality over quantity. I can't wait to get into this month's UFC Prospect Watch. I think April is going to be the best month we've had so far. You know, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit that bell. You know, we're doing some great things over here. Go ahead and, hit up Jeremy Brand and MMA Sucka. Last Word on Sports, we're putting this all together, collectively, and it's looking real good for this month. Last month, let's quickly touch on Sean Brady. We ranked him at #1, and I think we did a great job with that. He looked the part. We talked about his timing. We talked about the wrestling and how good his striking was getting, but he looked dominant, and I think that we ranked him, rightfully so at #1, and let's hope to have the same success going into this month. Jeremy once again providing another absolutely fantastic list of prospects. I mean, you're not going to hear me stop saying how excited I am to watch some of these young fighters, get into that octagon, because we actually had this list out a few days ago, but then between the fight cancellations, and then we also have some of these big prospect signings in the UFC. This is absolutely massive for fight fans, especially if you pay attention to the LFAs and the Braves and the CFFCs and Cage Warriors, because there's just prospects coming up from absolutely everywhere. So if you haven't already, hit that bell, hit that subscribe, throw a like on the video. Go ahead and do the same thing over at MMA Sucka, Last Word on Sports. We're just a happy community here in MMA. We're trying to have some fun with it. So let's get right into it, right? Nate Maness, that was a guy that we were actually going to rank about 6 or 7. Unfortunately, we're going to throw him in the honorable mention section, if you will. He did pull out of his fight. He had Ray Borg pull out of his fight. So I thought that was going to be a fantastic fight to see him in. Johnny Munoz Jr., who we're definitely going to be touching on in a little bit here. He looked the part, right? I was very, very, very happy to see how well he was able to, work the clinch, get up against the fence. He was able to switch positions very quickly. He basically won that first round, lost second. If it wasn't for those points, man, that was a very close fight, especially on short notice. So, we'll talk about that in more detail soon. But, let's get more into Nate Maness just quickly. He beat Luke Sanders in a very dominant fashion. 13-1 record against good competition, looks absolutely pristine. So, when we do get to see him, hopefully we get to talk about it again. But at this point, we're just going to throw him in the honorable mention and get right on with it, because, there's just some fun guys to chat about here. Zhu Rong is going to come in here at #10. And, the only real reason is lack of competition. But, pristine 17-3 record. A lot of his fights are coming in the same organization, the WLF out in China. I believe that stands for the Wu Lin Fang MMA promotion. And, he actually was dominant. So he's only ever lost by submission 3 fights. The last loss was actually in 2018, and he's been on a 9-fight winning streak ever since. He's been a main card headliner over there. In the last fight, he actually captured their lightweight title, which is now probably the reason he's now going to get a chance at the UFC here, because he looks like he was doing numbers for them over there. That's where I kind of, in looking at his highlight reel, definitely one of those fighters that likes to move front and back. Great head movement, but not a lot of lateral movement for a guy who enjoys striking so much. The one thing I do like, though, is he kind of uses the reset to avoid strikes. So he sees punches and kicks very well. It kind of backs out of the way, doesn't really circle and throw back or anything like that. And I mean, developing game, I'm sure, and that's going to be something he's going to have to learn, especially at this level. But the front and back movement seems to really work well for him. And again, powerful strikes, kicks, and hands. He really throws hands more than kicks from what I've seen, but he's got some power. And like I said, only ever lost by submission. So that's something to really take in, because he's definitely a headhunter. He's looking for knockouts. And the big thing is he's taking on a guy like Rodrigo Vargas, if you remember him. He actually beat, he lost to Brock Weaver via illegal knee early last year. And so we haven't seen him since then. And, I think that's going to be an absolute stand-up war. We got a really good kickboxer in Vargas, who's going to be throwing a lot of kicks, especially to the head. Good leg kicks coming in from the Asian as well. But I think that, when you look at some of the competition that he's faced, it's not going to be as clean cut as what we've seen from the Mexican side. It's just an overall ranking situation where we're not going to see a lot of guys get pulled out of these, WLF federations in China, but this guy looks like the real deal, at least from a striking perspective. I think the ground game and the jiu-jitsu is probably going to be a work in progress when it's at this level. But outside of that, man, ranking him at #10, with both guys having really good timing on the strikes and being able to see the strikes really wait and counter back, this is a very, very, very exciting fight. It looks like it's going to be a great kickboxing battle, and they're going to fight on April 24th at UFC 261, which is basically the last part of the month. I think that's going to be hella exciting. Dude's 9-0 since 2018. So, competition or not, the guy's definitely been winning and handily, like I said, lightweight champion out in China. So I'm excited to see that fight. I think it's going to be an absolute blast. So let's get right into number 9, right? Shamil Gamzatov. So that was a guy that we absolutely loved, right? That highlight reel heading into his UFC career is just absolutely ridiculous. Spinning elbow finishes, a lot of great striking. I mean, he reminded me of Magomedov, which is kind of funny because I feel like they're pretty close too, because Kiltsuna Abreu basically fought both of them and obviously lost, but yeesh. Can you imagine taking on both of these guys in the UFC? So, I mean, hands down, kudos to you for even taking those two fights. Absolute monsters, and had a great showing, right? It was really interesting in watching the Abreu fight. You kind of heard them talk about how Gamzatov has a brown belt jiu-jitsu, which is kind of interesting for the Dagestani wrestlers and that kind of background who pride themselves primarily on the sambo, the wrestling, and really bringing in the boxing to help them kind of round out their MMA game. But I think that he was able to showcase a lot of his skill. I thought the leg kicks were probably the best thing he was throwing. I think he could be a little bit looser with the hands. Maybe he was nervous when it came to the UFC because, like I said, the highlight reel prior to that was absolutely gorgeous. 14-0 fighter. So cardio looked great. That was another thing. When you think about a guy who's got to kind of push the pace and keep it going when he fights kind of technically like that, he really is kind of trying to headhunt it with a lot of the more precision and accurate style punches and kind of use those leg kicks and body kicks to set them up. But outside of that, I actually wanted to see some more of that wrestling. It didn't really work out that way. And I think keeping the fight off of the ground in the third round is kind of the main reason he won that split decision. So, kudos to him for always finding a way to win. And I think that's going to help him when he starts to climb these ranks in the UFC. But, when you think about what he has in store, I just think that that's going to be someone we have to keep looking at because we haven't seen him fight the best of competition. And I think that's where, when it comes to UFC, we've seen so many of these guys who make a mark, but then really just kind of fall off because they don't really have that opportunity. But when you look at it, 4 straight canceled bouts, 2 against Ovince St. Preux, 1 against Devin Clark, and then now 1 against Dao Jung. We had him ranked at number 1. That's where we kind of had to drop him down to number 9. So when you think about just like our over analysis, everybody kind of just shifted up in a way, and he's now at number 9. But I kind of like that anyway. We didn't want to put him in the honorable mention because frankly, from a number 1 who isn't fighting because of visa issues, as opposed to an injury or pulling out for any reason that he might have had to, put forward to the commission. But I think that's where we absolutely love this guy. He's a gamer. He looks the part. And I think that, when we get to see him in the UFC again after, his experience, almost 2 years ago, I think that's going to be a very fun fight. And if it's Dao Jung again, or even a guy like Ovince St. Preux, I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing challenge in just a second fight. So I think, we at least had to keep him on the rankings just for that. And now we get to talk on my boy, Johnny Munoz Jr. That 10-1 record is actually, it's great to look at because when you look at how he took that Manus fight, I mean, complete underdog, right? Short notice. He looked the part, man. He gave Manus an absolute, run for his money. When you think about how that fight was supposed to go, and even Manus's reaction to the win, like he was very excited about that. And I don't think he acted like, from the heart, someone that actually knew he won that fight right away. Like that was excitement there. Oh my God, on edge, boom. Yes, it was me. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I think from an overall perspective, like you think about how much of a good fight he put up on short notice, then Manus going over and just knocking out Lute Sanders the way he did. I think that really kind of, puts Johnny Munoz on the map because for me, he put up such a good fight. If it wasn't for the low blows and if it really wasn't for just kind of those situations where he wasn't able to kind of push that pace on him and keep him up against the fence. I mean, he was reversing in those clinch situations right till the end of the third round. So like cardio looked fine. I mean, the second round was just the main question. And then again, the points taken away via low blows. It was probably his take written, but again, that's a perfectly good first loss to take because I think that sets him up for an absolutely amazing, second fight, UFC career, whatever you want to call it. I also think this guy might be the one that shoots up this list, right? I think when you look at the performance that he had, we really can expect a lot from this guy, and I don't want to hype him up too much. And putting him at number 8, I think keeps us in reality a little bit. But at the same time, I'm really excited to see what he can do against a guy like Jamie Simmons on April 24th, UFC 261, because I think whatever he's putting in, he's the kind of guy that's taking it out, man. That was a very fun and interesting fight to watch. And I thought that when you look at the overall perspective of just his wrestling, the pace was amazing. He wasn't the one kind of losing out on that, despite being the short notice fighter. That's what had me so excited to see him fight a second time, because I couldn't believe that he was keeping such a pace and finding ways to reverse in the right situations and getting good strikes off. I mean, it was an absolutely beautiful fight. When you look back prior to that, King of the Cage, that's where he came from. It's going to be a fun fight. Look for that last card of the month, 24th. This kid's going to be someone to watch, win or lose. I think it's going to be an incredibly fun fight. All right, so this is a crazy one, because not only talking about, Aliaskhab Khizriev, we're going to actually talk about his opponent a little later as well. Crazy matchup. Let's just get right into him, right? Khizriev, 13-0 fighter, coming in at number 7 on our list. Great wrestler. And the thing I want to talk about more is the power in his strikes, especially early in the round. I just remembered his last fight. He just lands a big body kick and a big punch, and you hear these land. This is the Dana White Contender Series, so small octagon, big sound, all that stuff, just you can't not feel that yourself a little bit. And I think the biggest part that I was mostly impressed with is a huge win over Mr. Steal Your Limbs, Rustamir Palhares. I'm pretty happy to see that. I think most people who know Palhares' record are going to be like, yeah, anytime he takes a loss, slap on the wrist, pun intended. That's the kind of way I want to take that. But I think when you look at his record outside the UFC, this is a kid that, it's a scary fight, right? This is nobody that you want to play around with. I think that when you look at the cardio in that fight, it was absolutely phenomenal. And the willingness to grind, right? We've seen him finish in the first round and just go to the third round in another fight. I think that's phenomenal. It's just all these Russian fighters, right, that are coming with that really good pedigree of wrestling and some power in their hands. It's really dictating the future of the sport. And I think that when you look at the opponent in Kyle Dawkes on April 10th, I mean, for me, it's just such a this is a main event fight. If you think about how good these guys can be and who they might end up being in the next year or two, it's so exciting for me to watch it. And this is probably one of the fights that really kind of made this month and this kind of ranking so exciting for me to do, because I get to talk about both these guys on the same ranking here. And, depending on who wins, we're either going to look really smart or really dumb. But for now, we're putting Khizriev at number 7. Overall history, Dana White Contender Series showing was great. But again, I still feel like that's kind of like G League NBA stuff, right? You're going to look the part on there if you really are, coming in with your head held high, A game, all that stuff is on point. But then you start getting into the ocean with the sharks, and kind of everybody's doing that, right? It's just all about chess games and who's making the mistake first and all that stuff, which is a completely different ballgame. You don't get to look as good that quickly in that arena. So I think that's where we have to still keep him at number 7. We're hoping that, all of that experience makes this a really fun fight. But, Kyle Dawkes is going to be a fun guy to talk about in a little bit here. So stay tuned for that. Again, right? Number 6 is going to be fighting one of the fighters pretty high on our list, if maybe number 1. But at number 6, Juan Espino. Is there someone that is more exciting to watch at 40 years old? We're watching all these other fighters at 37 plus or so kind of lose that, next gear that they all had, and finding new ways to kind of tailor make their fighting stuff. Wonder Boy is one of the best, because his fighting style is just so bred for anyone who can move, that long of their life that quickly. It's just not a lot of exertion on his part. Oof, is it fun to watch? In this case, Espino had an amazing UFC debut. We saw him with that scarf submission. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, when you think about his overall career, 40 years old, fighting out of American Top Team, won the Ultimate Fighter, and the story leading into the Ultimate Fighter is absolutely phenomenal. It's my favorite part of just looking into him in such detail, but he basically goes 2-0 in 2011. Just goes absolutely crazy. Then he ends up fighting Vitaly Minakov, who is a Bellator veteran, 22-1. His only losses to Czech Congo in Bellator. And I mean, gets rocked in under 10 seconds. So 2-1 fighter basically says, wow, I just got knocked out in under 10 seconds. I want nothing to do with this right now. 6 years, bye. Says peace to the sport, does his own thing for a while. All of a sudden, comes back, goes 6-0 and gets a chance on the Ultimate Fighter and wins the Ultimate Fighter in 2018. So now he hasn't even lost since then. I mean, the scarf pull choke that we just talked about against, I believe his name was Jeff Hughes. Yeah, he fought Jeff Hughes. And I just, that was a dominant fight, right? I think he got him up against the fence very, very quickly. By that point, it was just working in so much technical skill in grappling. I think the strikes, he was able to use them when he needed to, but it was very obvious that he was just trying to work in and get closer and try to finish on the ground. It was really, really impressive to watch a 40-year-old guy go on this kind of trajectory and finish in that fashion in the UFC. It's just like, I don't think I'm more excited about any other 40-year-old in the UFC anymore. But, when you think about everything that he's brought to the table in that time, it's like from 35 to 40, this guy's living a life that, half of us could only dream of. And I think that plays a part, just overall. Like, he looks good for his age. The health factor is all there. He looks like a true heavyweight. So in terms of just overall skill, it's all there. But, now it's time to start really, really, swimming with some real sharks like we're talking about here. And, I'm really excited to get into his opponent, which is, coming in pretty high on our list. But, Alexander Romanov is probably one of the most impressive heavyweights, in the UFC right now. And it's coming after we've seen guys like Juan Espino and Chris Dawkes do their thing. So it's seeing such a huge resurgence in 2020, and that's what I'm most excited about when it comes to that division. But, he's part of that process, and I think a fight against Alexander Romanov is going to dictate how well, you're going to be able to deal with some of the top-ranked fighters in this division, because it's starting to look like, some killers are making their way up here. And when you go back all the way, 21 fight win streak, those are the things that we're talking, those are the guys he's losing to. For Vitaly to beat him in the way he did, that's the part that makes me really excited to see what he can do so late in his career after taking 6 years to be like, no, I never want that to happen to me ever again for the rest of my life. So I'll just take a chance in starting my career at 35, 36 years old and never let that happen again. So if there's anyone that wants to start this sport a little bit later in their career and all that kind of fun stuff, this is the guy you want to model yourself after. So he's going to be fighting Romanov on April 17th. That's the Gastelum card. I'm just so pumped for the fights this month. It's going to be absolutely insane. That's number 6, Juan Espino. Another beautiful heavyweight to keep your eyes on. But let's get into some of the female fighters. We knew it was coming. You don't know who yet. But up number 5, we're going to give it to the home training lady, and Lupita Godinez at 5-0. Let's talk about how good she looked in her LFA championship fight, right? I always thought that Vanessa Demopoulos was getting a lot of good opportunity. That was a fighter that people wanted to really see succeed. And we talked about 2 of the showings very quickly that she had. The Dynamic Contender Series against my girl, McKenna. What a fun striking battle that was. And to be honest, it was a very similar outcome, I feel, for her in both fights when it comes to, her losing her LFA belt and also losing that opportunity on the Dynamic Contender Series. Good on her. She's actually come back with a first-round knockout of her own in her most recent LFA fight. So we'll keep an eye on her as she starts to climb those ranks in LFA again to get her belt back. But Lupita's only 27 years old, and frankly, this is the best prospect from a female perspective that we have coming out of Canada. I rave about the Charles Jourdains and all that, but from a female perspective, this is the best prospect we've got. And her 5-0 might not dictate it, but the moment she beat Demopoulos, I think she landed on a lot of people's radar. It's that striking, right? She got, unfortunately, Vanessa got lit up. When you look at the combos that she was throwing, my favorite part was the jab. I felt like that she wasn't even just using the jab lazily. It was even double pumping the jab to set up combos. So it's you saw her throw the jab, then again, and then come back with 2 heavy lefts. So it's her jab is not only landing with good power, but then she uses it to follow it up with 2 or 3 more strikes. So it's really setting up for 2 to 3, 4 punch combos, which is making her look so deadly on the feet. And I think that, when you look at the head movement and things like that, it's what made her just look so shockingly good when it came to that title fight. It ended up going the distance, and a lot of people thought it was going to finish before that. She just looked that good. But, endurance is a lovely thing for both ends, and unfortunately, if you can't finish early, but you're going hard, you're probably just going to have to go hard for the next 3 rounds and just take that decision. But she looked fantastic. I think that the best part about it is when you look at who she's getting now in the UFC, it's no one's getting any easy shots in the UFC anymore. If you're stepping in on short notice, especially as a prospect, chances are you're taking on someone that's pretty well versed in the MMA world. And right now we're talking about a girl like Jessica Penne, right? Absolute legend of the sport, UFC Invicta veteran. She's done it all. I think when you really analyze the fact that she's 5-0 with that Demopoulos win for a title, I think that she has that really, really lucky chance of being someone that gets to go 6-0 with 2 massive wins like that. That's a huge opportunity for her, because if she gets a short notice win over Jessica Penne, I think that's your biggest hope, right? In 2 fights, you win an LFA title and then beat, one of the biggest veterans the sport has seen when it comes to just like long-term female fighters. It's insane. I think that's like the best thing you could possibly hope for. So, all the power to her. Jessica Penne's no rollover. So that's going to be an incredible fight as well. If the striking comes into play, she's obviously going to be looking to take advantage of that, right? Like I said, that double pump jab just looks devastating, right? She's getting Vanessa Demopoulos on her back foot and then landing with the next 1-2s from the left. So I just think she's just so fun to watch. All the power to her. Canadian. We really want her to kind of succeed from that light, but all in all, right? You can't expect anything more from some of these up and coming strikers in the female weight classes, because frankly, they're just, if people thought they were sloppy and hard to watch before, they are most certainly not anymore, because frankly, these are looking like Valentina Shevchenko's that could, with the right training and all that kind of stuff, get to a level where we start to see a really, really, really great crop of fighters. Because let's be real, for the next 4 rankings that we're going to get into, now that we finish the bottom 5, we're going to be talking about some great female battles and some great female fighters that are going to have some good drama leading into their UFC careers. So let's get right into that one, right? So at number 4, we got another girl coming in. You know what? I'm just going to kind of forewarn you, but we got a couple girls coming in here actually. But Erin Blanchfield, right? We had to add her to the list. How could we not? And we're not going to put her in the bottom 5. She has to go into that top 4. We think that when, from that Tracy Cortez loss, which is something we're going to touch on in a little bit here too, it kind of seems to be a grappler's decision, or which way do you want to go? Because that first round with her just locking up that armbar, we'll try to lock up that armbar for so long. It's like, is that offensive? Is that a 50? Like, it's just it's subjective. Like, I just don't think that you're going to have, the each side really feeling that they got what they want out of it, because the judges themselves might be biased to one side or another. So we kind of saw it in the scoring. A lot of people felt like it could have gone either way. Me personally, I think that the way Tracy Cortez fights, it makes her look like the winning fighter. So even when I'm saying that she was in an armbar, she was defending it. She was in top position. And a lot of that, to me, even if that was the lost round, when you look at the way she did the third round, I think the footwork and the wrestling, like, these are things that she uses to her advantage very well. And I think those are the things when you keep the fight standing, because you're defending takedowns. And when you're landing strikes at will and moving around and not getting hit very much, I think that's what really sells to the judges, especially now. And you're seeing that in a lot of these decisions where sometimes you think it should go a different way. So let's get more into Erin. I think that everyone seems more excited about her. I mean, when you think about everything you've seen over the last 72 hours from just Twitter and Instagram, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, this has to be one of the most exciting prospects we've seen. The Patties of the world are coming and going as usual, but, the Blanchfield are someone you just hear about, right? Like, 21, 22 years old for what she's been accomplishing, right? You have to go back into her career. You realize she's 6-1 at that age. So a lot of these fights, she was literally a teenager. And I think that she was definitely on path to becoming, in getting that next Invicta title shot. But again, we're seeing this opportunity for a lot of female fighters in Invicta, where just as they're about to get into that cusp of, fighting for a title, they get the call up. We saw it happen to Miranda Maverick. Same thing's happening, I think, to Erin Blanchfield, and good on them, right? I think that's what Invicta is trying to do, which is, keep these fighters going. And they really are that feeder league for all the female fighters, which is great to see. And I'm really, really happy about, the growth, and just like, let's call it a dime a dozen, because that's what we want, right? We want to be able to say that there is no argument. If you're someone that really does bash female MMA, I mean, unfortunately, I'm going to let you know firsthand that this is actually doing a lot better than you think. And if you're hanging on something that you felt maybe 5 years ago, maybe you need to give it another shot, because I'm actually quite excited about it and have been for a very long time. Shout out Holly Holm, Rose Namajunas, Joanna and Jake Check, boom, boom, boom. Anyway, I digress. So I don't like the fact that she's had a couple canceled bouts, right? Like, this is a prospect that everyone's been looking forward to. The best thing about it is, she's the kind of kid that's probably training her butt off in that time. Very young, jiu-jitsu addict, right? That's her game, man. She looks really good doing it. What I was most happy about is everyone's always you can't always make people happy, right? So everyone's probably calling her a jiu-jitsu fighter, then boom, lands this massive head kick finish, right? So now I'm actually thinking to myself, way to silence the critics, girl. Because when you want to really be that next level fighter, they're always going to criticize you. You're always going to get criticized for something. It happened to John Jones, right? Like, at the end of the day, John Jones's chin is one of the most amazing things you'll ever see, but we're so focused on all the other things he does. And when I talk about John Jones, for the record, it's always inside the octagon, outside the octagon, different guy, but the guy is a legend. And this is what we want to see, evolution. So, you're talking about a 6-1 Erin Blanchfield in her early 20s, starting to land head kick finishes, just drops, like finishes. I think that's where you start to get real excited. And I think that's where you're starting to see, your mainstream fans starting to pick up names like Erin Blanchfield, because she's doing exactly what she should be doing and getting wins over fighters that you want to see her getting wins over. Tracy Cortez fight is the one, blemish on her record, but let's just say if the UFC didn't have that rematch on its mind, you're absolutely crazy. Let's talk about her upcoming fight, right? We got Norma Dumont. I think that's going to be a crazy tough fight. I don't think that people are going to give Dumont a lot of credit, but that fight's coming up on April 10th. That's actually pretty soon. She just kind of got the word. It is in the middle of doctor appointments like crazy, right as we speak today. So it's a long process. It's going to be a lot for this kid to take on. And when you look at Norma's recency, the recency bias is so much in her favor. You have a loss against Megan Anderson, and then she just beat, Ashley Evans Smith, who's a pretty good, in terms of veteran and overall skill. Like, she's a very tried, tested, and true type of veteran, and I think that is a very solid 1-1 to have when you think that Megan Anderson just fought for the title against Amanda Nunes. I can't wait. I think this is exactly what you want to see. We just talked about, Lupita taking on a girl like Jessica Penne. Now we're talking about a girl like Erin Blanchfield taking on a Norma Dumont. This is what we want to see. It's a passing of the torch. It's really seeing if these girls are at a level where can they take over for some of these veterans, or is there still a lot to learn? Because some of these veterans are the ones that people don't have such a huge, appreciation for, but all of a sudden we're starting to see some really, really good signs of finishers and technical strikers. So maybe it's going to bring out some of the veterans to, look at Mary Renault. I thought Mary Renault did a fantastic job against Macy Chasen, but that fight was still 3 rounds and it was still a long fight. And Chasen's a really, really, really lengthy and good wrestler, and she brought it out in the 3rd round. So that's what I like to talk about when it comes to female fighters. I think it looks absolutely amazing what we're going to have on the docket come 2021 as a whole and in April. So let's get right into the top 3, shall we? Tracy Cortez. Now, if you talk to Jeremy about it, we had a lot of discussion about this 3, 4, and 5 and who we want to rank number 1 since we lost Shamil to the, lower ranks because of the visa issues. Tracy Cortez, man, I think she could be a pound for pound number 1. There's an argument here, right? If everyone's talking about Erin Blanchfield, and there is, on record, a victory, and also a good enough side of people that believe she won the fight. So if that's the biggest female prospect coming into the UFC, Tracy Cortez deserves a lot of credit, right? Let's talk about the things I absolutely love. I'm all about defense when it comes to this shit. If you really love boxing and you really love all this shit, you gotta love the art of not getting hit as much as you love the art of getting hit. That's my 2 cents. And Tracy Cortez does a really good job of that. She has an 85% takedown defense and 62% striking defense. And I think that's actually very, very, very good. I think that actually shows you signs of a fighter who's able to get out of danger and definitely be able to put in her own game plan. We saw it against fighters like, Erin Blanchfield. That was a fight where she definitely could have been dealing with all this type of, adversity when it comes to the ground game and got sloppy and things like that. But no, she kept moving. She kept landing strikes. She uses her wrestling to avoid getting taken down and is a good enough striker to have confidence in her hands. That's what I really, really, really like about her. Now, when you think about where she comes from, right? If you know me and my love for MMA, it comes with a huge little thing for Henry Cejudo. Cringe, whatever you want to call it. I think Aljamain Sterling stole that title a long time ago, and I think it's starting to come to light from a very mainstream perspective. But Henderson Cejudo's an absolute G. And his fight ready team are an absolute G of men. Like, it's just an absolute crazy team. And I think that we're seeing it with fighters like Tracy Cortez, the way she's able to execute her gameplay, the way she's able to keep her cardio going all 3 rounds, the way she's able to stay out of danger at will and kind of just do her thing. It's the most fun to watch. I think that that's what makes her very dangerous going into any fight. And when you think about getting a kickboxer in her next fight, Justine Kish, absolute veteran, tried, tested, and true type of striker, coming in on April 17th. I think that she's someone that, is that a fight that's very winnable for her? I think so. I think that if she starts to even consider using her wrestling to get top position a lot, she might be able to just ride this game out to the decision. If you want to get into a striking battle with Justine Kish, good luck. That's really on you. But at the same time, if that wrestling pedigree is what it is, and it looks like it is, it could be a very long night for Justine Kish. And so that's why I want to put Tracy Cortez at number 3, if not higher, and even give her that consideration of one of the top prospects to watch this month, because not only do I think that her fight is winnable, but I also think that when you look at everything she's done up to that fight, I mean, I want to go back to the Maria Agapova fight on Dana White Contender Series, right? She was ranked this high with an 8-fight win streak, and then Vanessa Mello, Stephanie Edgar. I mean, those are the last 3 wins. So I think she looks the part. I think that this sets up an absolutely amazing potential bout between Erin Blanchfield and Tracy Cortez, which a lot of diehard fans are very much looking forward to now that they know that Erin's in the UFC. They can get on a couple good win streaks here. I don't think it's a fight that you need to waste on a prelim. You should definitely get this as either a prelim main event or even get it on a main card, because you can build this fight up. It's a phenomenal battle because Erin definitely wants that one back. It's her only loss, and I think that there's enough backing for her to say that she won that fight. And so if that can happen with both these girls riding immense win streaks, I mean, what more could we possibly want from even a main event? I think it's absolutely billable, and I can't wait to watch it. All right, guys. Right now, I think 1 and 2 are, I'm going to say interchangeable because of what we've seen them do. Number 2 for me, number 2 in general, me and Jeremy, we came to a decision very amicably and said Kyle Dawkes at 10-1 is the number 2 fighter going into this month. It's only, here's the bread and butter of that. I love the Dawkes brothers in general. Chris Dawkes as a heavyweight, some of the best hands we've seen in a very long time. The speed that he throws, some of his combos, there's no looping punches with him. They're coming straight up the middle. He's able to throw some of those, coming around hooks if he needs to, but the guy is not afraid to get in that pocket and start to dance with you. It's what makes him exciting. It's what makes him so damn dangerous, right? Like, that's what I absolutely love about him as a heavyweight, because some people think he's so undersized and stuff like that, but man, the way he punches, the way he boxes, like, he uses his length as much as he can to his advantage, and it makes him deadly. It makes him be able to see punches so well, and the way he lands, it's just, the accuracy is phenomenal. And from a heavyweight, what more do you want, right? Everybody's getting excited for that. So let's get into his younger brother Kyle. I think that from a national pride perspective, these guys are the best to watch. I think that they conduct themselves in such a professional way. The last couple of fights that we've seen them have, a lot of things kind of, whether it goes their way or not, like, they're just so game for everything. And it's just really great to see when some of these up and comers are just down to have a good time and just get in there and throw. And when you look at what Kyle Dawkes has done, like, I'm going to break down his record a little bit, because he's a 10-1 fighter, and that one loss is to Brendan Allen. Now, that Brendan Allen loss, take this in. This is a short notice fight that Kyle Dawkes took. And Brendan Allen is, at the time starting to really approach that rank level competition, because his supposed opponent was Ian Heinick, who just fought Kelvin Gastelum. So put that in perspective, where Ian Heinick was in his career, where he didn't even take that fight with Brendan Allen. Kyle Dawkes took the fight and lost via really, really good decision. Like, beautiful fight. Everything you expect from Kyle Dawkes. An absolutely great wrestler and improving striker. Just looks so fun to watch. But just to paint that picture of where Kyle Dawkes went with that Brendan Allen fight, who Ian Heinick was going into now a Kelvin Gastelum fight without even, taking in any type of victory there. So that's where Kyle Dawkes started his UFC career at 9-0, and then basically took his 9-1 loss. Like, he's a 1-1 UFC fighter against Dustin Stolfus, who was actually really, really good going into that fight. And you know, Kyle Dawkes is like hella fun to watch. He's technical. He's a grinder. He brings some of that old school, like, fiery mentality. It's just, he doesn't seem outspoken, but he's just, when he's in there, like, he lets the fighting do the talking. And it's just so fun to watch, man. And it's credible, right? Like, this is the number one stat that I want to throw at you guys. Kyle Dawkes' opponents right now. He's a 1-1 fighter with an upcoming fight, obviously. His combined opponent record going into his fight is 40-4. These are the guys in 3 fights in the UFC at just 9-0 that he was willing to take on. So 9-0, loses to Brendan Allen, and then gets a win against our boy over here, Dustin Stolfus. So take that in. He's got 3 fights, 40-4 record, and it's basically Brendan Allen's the loss via decision, goes and gets a beautiful win against Dustin Stolfus, and now has to go and take on a guy like Khizriev, who's 13-0 and looks absolutely beastly. I get to watch 2 southpaws go at it. I like Kyle Dawkes' length in this fight. I hope he uses it to his advantage and avoids taking a lot of damage here, because his wrestling and his defense is really good. 94% takedown defense. That should help him keep this fight competitive. A lot of people, I think, are going to be betting against him when it comes to a lot of that Russian. You know, everyone wants to bump those guys right now, but you know, Kyle Dawkes is such a good fighter, and I can't stress that enough, because if you analyze the way he fights it, you have to go watch that Brendan Allen fight and understand that that's a short notice fight too. Like, it's incredible for that to be short notice, for it to be a debut against the guy who was supposed to fight a guy who just fought Kelvin Gastelum. Like, that's who Ian Heinick was at that point. And I hate to keep repeating it, but I just really want to give Kyle Dawkes his dues at a 1-1 UFC fighter, 10-1 overall record. It's insane what this man is taking on in just his 3rd fight when you really analyze that 40-4 record. But again, 94% takedown defense against the competition that he's seeing. Great heart. Like, you know, if that was a stat, he's a 5-star rating without question. So for me, I think that this fight, if it goes 3 rounds, expel Kyle Dawkes to really, really use those types of intangibles to take this fight home. Because if he's not getting hit with big shots, or he's not seeing any real disadvantages, you know, the Brendan Allen fight was a lot of cardio. It was a lot of different things that he can work on. And so that's where I think, like, coming in at number 2, I'm very confident putting him there, and very interchangeably at number 1 or 2, depending on how his fight goes. Because to be honest, he's just a guy that I don't think he can make a lot of mistakes outside of those things where now he starts to fight elite fighters, and he starts to see guys who can do a lot of different things at high levels. That's where you're going to start seeing guys who really have to start brushing up their game and getting elite at something. Because, you know, if you're not a guy who can cover up very well, you might want to avoid some of these big strikers who are going to punch you through a wall. Again, I can't beat this any harder than I already have. 13-0, another undefeated fighter. I mean, it's insane to watch what he's doing. But if he gets this win, man, I think that Kyle Dawkes deserves to be on a main card, potentially a pay-per-view. You know, we're going to see him on April 10th, so maybe we can get him on a pay-per-view, depending on how well he does in the future. Because win or lose, this guy's going to be an absolute dog in there, and that's what people love to see. All right, guys, you ready? At this point, number 1 should be crazy obvious, right? I really think it should be, but Alexander Romanov. And it's funny, going into this list, I mean, he was someone I might have even considered putting at number 1, but till you really dig into his highlight reel and start to understand what he's accomplished, it's kind of crazy, right? Because even if you want to shit on the competition that he's been against, not UFC caliber, not LFA, not of these, you know, big organizations that we've come to be used to, it's insane how well he's doing against the competition regardless. He's fast. He's quick for a heavyweight. The footwork, the way he moves into opportunistic positions when he's up against the fence or grappling on the ground, it's hard to keep up with. You're watching guys that really are struggling. They're either getting picked up 10 feet in the air and getting thrown to the ground, or just struggling to find ways to get their legs around his because there's no room. He's just cutting them off from any type of momentum, type of movement to get out of those dangerous spots. And he just waits and picks his spots and starts to land crazy ground and pound. And if you're a guy that just wants to sit there and take punches, he locks these submissions. Like, he's such a good finisher. He's seen a third round only once in his career. And, I want to dive deep into that fight because, Sultan Murtazaliev is the person that he lost to. They have a amateur wrestling history going into this fight. So not only was there amazing history going into this, but now he's pushing him 3 rounds for the first time in how long, and the last time we've ever seen him do it. And it was a really, really great fight. I mean, I'm going to pull up some clips right here for you guys, but the way he's, kind of dodging a lot of these dangerous moments, but he imposes his will come the third round, and some of the strikes he lands. And for me, it was the grappling. Like, I just really enjoyed the way he was having his way with them. The way he started the fight. Are you kidding me? Like, it's insane. Like, this man moves like he's trying to be a flyweight. It's phenomenal to watch, and the athleticism is there. And you have to ask yourself, if he lost some weight, would it be better? Blah, blah, blah. But when you think about his UFC record already at 2-0, I mean, I wasn't so impressed with the Rock Martinez win because of just like the lead up and fairly short notice and all these kinds of things. I just think it was a very set up fight in that way. But when you look at the second win, that forearm choke is like a finishing move for this man, because not only was it the second time he did it, but to do it to a guy like Marcos Rogerio de Lima just completely puts him out against the mat with his forearm. Like, watching a grown man do that to another grown man, and both of them being heavyweights, there's something just very, very just overpowering and scary to me about that. It's just murderous in a weird way, but it's just hella skillful. I mean, it's crazy how he locks it up. It's crazy how he's able to land it, that easily against a UFC fighter of that caliber. So it wasn't luck the first time he did it. And, like I said, the caliber of opponent here, even at that 13-0, is pretty solid. The only person that it's very questionable is our boy Yuri Gorbenko, who is now sitting at a 12-50 record. So other than Yuri at that 12-50, I think the rest of them look pretty good. When you watch that fight, it was absolutely domination to, just in the air, Cormier style, took him for a ride. Actually, I don't know if it's Cormier style. It might have almost been like, WWE style, but the wrestling is really good. The footwork is beautiful, and he uses that grappling just to smother you. And as a heavyweight, it seems very exhausting to deal with him because his momentum and movement is just always seems to be in the right place. He seems to have energy to go for as long as possible. And even that third round against his boy, I just think that was an absolutely great showing to see that he could still do that. If you want to criticize him for some of those earlier fights where, he was maybe looking like a little bit way past his, what you would call his colleagues, if you will. It might have been time for him to move on to graduate school, if you will. But rounding out that list, we talked about how he's fighting Juan Espino. I think that's a great test for the grappling side. His striking, I think, is going to be key here. If he's able to really let loose and be the quicker fighter, it's going to be a tough night, I think, for Juan Espino. But at the same time, if this fight is in close quarters, you have to kind of see who's going to carry that momentum. I think Espino, the way he finished that Hughes fight, a lot of momentum was playing his way, but did Hughes look like he was using all of his tools to be able to truly, reverse or transition or get out of those places? It looked like he was dominated in every area. I do not believe we're going to see that with Alex Romanov. I believe that he's shown more than capable of being able to just avoid any, very terrible spots against the fence. Like, I've just noticed him always be in a very opportunistic position when he gets close to the fence, whether he's pushing you there or gets put there and switches it. He's always in a great position. So I'm excited to see that fight. When we think about two fights that are basically on this ranking, I mean, it puts us in a little bit of hot water, but not only do we have those two fights, between Kyle Dawkes and Khizriev, but we also have the Romanov and Espino fight. But then we also have all of this like really cool intertwining, female history between Blanchfield and Cortez, and, Lupita making her way up here with that beautiful striking win over Demopoulos. Like, it's such a crazy crop of, people to watch out for. And then we got these dark horses like Johnny Munoz and Zhu Rong, and Unfortunately, we'll get to watch Shamil fight this month, but I'm really excited to the way it's kind of looking. Like we got the bona fide guys who may be able to jump between each other, and then some of these dark horses that could really make a mark. So between these 3 cards, like we said, quality over quantity so far. I love it. I'm so pumped for all these fights. I might be more pumped for the prelims and undercards at this point than I am for the main cards because they're fire. All these guys are gonna be in action. So don't forget, hit like, subscribe, share it with anyone you think will like it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Don't forget to give a shout out to Jeremy and the people at LWS. Always a pleasure. Till next month. Peace.